Hello again, fellow audiophiles. I am Wave Theory, and this is the very high-end Audio Technica closed-back dynamic driver headphone from their Narukami series, the ATH-AWKG. This is $4,200 US. As I said, it is a full-size dynamic driver closed-back headphone with Kurogaki wood cups on the back, and we'll talk about what that means here in a little bit as the video unfolds. This was an extremely generous loan to me directly from Audio Technica USA. They have made no attempt to influence my opinion on this piece one way or the other, so all thoughts and opinions you're about to hear on this are mine and mine alone. There will be no affiliate links this time because I am not an affiliate link member directly with Audio Technica, and I don't know of very many retailers who have these. But if in the future I find an affiliate link, I will put one down in the description, and that will help me get a few dollars back if you use that link, and I will label it as such so that you know that's what you are using if you choose to do that. I have very mixed feelings on this headphone, and I really, really wanted to love it, and I can't, okay? But there are a lot of really strong qualities about it, and it has a tuning that will appeal to some. I am just not one of those people. So stick around right after Shameless self-promotion to find out why I say such things. Here we go.
Hello. I'm one of the reasons that Wave Theory can't spend all of his money on audio gear. He wants you to know that your support is vital for keeping the channel running. So if you enjoy Wave Theory's bussin' review riz and no-cap review style, and want to encourage him to stay in the basement so I don't have to listen to his dad jokes as much, like the video and subscribe to the channel. You can also send him a donation on PayPal or sign up for the Patreon. Links are in the description. Now on to the review.
All right, get your beverage of choice and get comfy. We're going to be here for a while because in order to do this $4,200 headphone due diligence, which has some very real strengths, but also for many people, I think some very real drawbacks, we need to take our time and get into it. So I will timestamp this video out, but it's probably going to be on the longer side. So here we go. All right. To cut to the chase here, my bottom line on this headphone is that it might very well be the best technically performing headphone, particularly closed-back headphone, that I have heard to date. And that also does it a little bit of injustice because it is on an elite tier of technical performance for any type of headphone. Okay? It is that strong on the technicals. The tuning here for my ears and my preferences, and I think for a lot of people's ears and a lot of people's preferences, is really unfortunate. There will be a niche audience for this headphone that will really love it. It will be the tuning they're looking for, it'll bring the technicals, and it can be their closed back end game headphone. I don't really believe in endgame, but I know it's an idea out there. But that's the kind of level that we are talking about here. It's just that for me, there are some tuning flaws in here that really make this a deal breaker. I would not want to own one, but I'm also very excited about what Audio Technica could do with a closed back headphone with a little bit different tuning and this level of technical performance. All right, let's unpack all of that and really get into it here. So again, $4,200 US, and so that puts it up in, on the elite tier price-wise. All right, and like starts to beg the question and demand the question, is this an end game headphone? Now, as I just said, am not really a believer in end game in terms of audio because I think we're always going to find something. We hobbyists, we're never really satisfied for all that long. We always find something and we always get that itch back and want to keep either trying something different or just keep moving up in terms of quality, okay? But this is one of the most expensive closed-back headphones on the market, and there's not a ton of like really high-end options for closed-back headphones out there. So it really intrigued me just for those reasons right there. When they told me that they were sending me one of these, I was thrilled. I was like, oh my goodness. First of all, this came in the first wave of stuff that has ever been sent to me directly from Audio Technica, and I've done a lot of Audio Technica reviews lately. Okay, just directly from Audio Technica, 3 that I've done before this would be the ATH-WP900, the ATH-ADX5000, and the ATH-ADX3000. But this one is probably more expensive than all of those 3 put together. Is that true? Yeah, I think it is. Okay. And so it's the first one that I got out. It's the first one that I listened to. And then there were some things about it that I'm like, I'm going to have to wait on this. I'm going to have to do some prep for this and tweak it a little bit and then get back to it. And so I did all of the other Audio Technicas first, and then I got to this one, which is why you've seen it sitting over here on this shelf behind me here for quite a while. It's finally time. Let's do it. Okay, so that's the $4,200 again, and like the questions that come up when you talk about a $4,200 headphone. 53 millimeter dynamic drivers in here that use what the website specifies as German Permandur magnet structures. I don't know exactly what that means, but that's what they call it in there. But these, as I understand it, are like very highly customized drivers that go in here. I don't know what the driver material itself is made of. I don't remember seeing that on the website. However, the impedance of said drivers is rated at 48 ohms with a 102 decibel per milliwatt sensitivity rating. Okay, and they are not particularly difficult to drive. These are actually quite easy driving headphones in there, so they are amp friendly in terms of power demand. Okay, you can plug this into a lot of mobile devices and all of that, and you'll get plenty of power output for these. Let's talk about the naming here real quick, just because that's interesting. This is from the Narukami series from Audio Technica, and Narukami is, according to their website, the name of the thunder god in Japanese legend. So I just thought that was interesting. And then the Kurogaki wood, which is actually an actual wood type of a Japanese tree, I believe, in there. And it really is beautiful. I understand it to be quite a rare wood, and I will show you a close-up of the wooden cups here in a little bit different view here in just a moment. Also in the stock package, you get 2 sets of pads, and I want to point that out here too. On these right here, on the headphone right now, is the ZMF Universe Hybrid pads, and that comes now stock as a standard package with the headphone and the Audio Technica pads that are included, and I'll show you a close-up of these too. And they do sound very different, they feel very different, and so we're going to unpack all of that as the review unfolds too. Okay, I think that is enough of the setup work for right now. So what I'm going to do something a little bit differently here that I don't normally do, and I'm going to show you the packaging that this headphone comes in, because there is a couple of points to be made about that in there, and I think it's going to be important to kind of help frame the review here as well. So we're going to do that, and as part of that, I will also then switch to an overhead view where I show you a close-up of the build of this headphone, give you a good look at these beautiful wood cups, okay? And then we'll come back, we'll talk test gear and sound and comparisons and where this fits in the market and all of that good stuff. So here we go. The ATH-AWKG comes in this somewhat cartoonishly large box. How large exactly is this box? Here is the headphone. For scale, the box is several times bigger than the headphone. Now, this box, the outer cardboard, as is often the case in this kind of style, here is just a cardboard slip sleeve, like so, and then you're presented with this monstrosity. Okay, take that out there, flip this up, bunch of flaps there. I am showing you this box because I have a point to make. This comes in a shipping carton, yet bigger than all of this. Like, just the room, the sheer room that this takes up is quite surprising. All right, so now we have to get this out of the way. All right, into this box, which just completely unfolds, okay, into the box that actually the headphone actually sits in, which just has this like lid pops off there. I've obviously taken the headphone out. Okay, some literature here, gauzy material. Okay, almost like hairnet material for what gets worn at somebody puts over their hair at a restaurant. Okay, nice velvet packaging here. This is nice to the touch. All of the cables and everything go in here. The headphone sits in here. Okay, like so. And then of course, okay, there we go. Now, this wooden box may look impressive, but it's cheap to the feel. Like, I don't know if this is just pine. It almost feels like balsa, which I don't know why you would make it out of balsa, but it just, yeah, the box looks a lot more impressive than it feels. Now, I have a point to make about this. And that point will be better served a little bit later in the video when we talk about the cables that are included in this packaging. But this box is big, and you're probably, my guess is you're probably just going to store it somewhere. If you're like me and you get one of these boxes, it's nice when you take the headphone out of the package and you look at it for the first time. But then it just goes on a shelf, back in the box, on a shelf, out of sight, out of mind. The headphone is probably sitting on a stand or hanging on a hook next to your equipment rack. Okay, never to be thought of again. So anyway, that's there for those who want to see it. All right, let's move on to other points. Before we get to that point that I was alluding to, let's look at the headphone itself here. So, Kurogaki wood, beautiful, right? Like the Kurogaki wood, like kind of normally has this, their website describes it as like a cinnamon color, and I can kind of see that here, but more of like a closer to honey or an amber color up here. But these black markings, if Audio Technica's website are to be believed, no one is really sure how Kurogaki wood gets these markings. They are naturally occurring, but no one's really sure how. And you see how like they can be very unique from cup to cup. Okay, and so like this unit that they sent me to here is like, okay, a little bit overall brighter tone on that one and then darker tone on there. And I'm talking about color tone here, not sound tone. Okay, just to be clear on that. But absolutely gorgeous there. I mean, it's up there with the ZMFs and the Lawtons of the world in terms of like just the quality of craftsmanship and the presentation and all of that on these wood cups here on the back of this headphone. All right, now these ear cups here are divided into two chambers. The website talks about how there's some kind of divider on the inside there, and I'm not going to take it apart to show to you, okay? But that creates two different acoustic environments in there, which they claim help smooth out bass response. Now, does it actually do that? Like, it does have a pretty smooth bass response, which we'll get to in the sound section, but I can't tell you whether or not that two-chamber approach works over other designs or not. I'm just reporting to you what's on their website. Okay. Despite the wood cups, it is not overly heavy. I'm going from memory here, but I think it's about 390 grams of mass with the stock pads and without the cable attached. And there you see the cable entry. I'll show you more about the cables later, okay, in a little bit as I make that point that I alluded to earlier. These are ZMF hybrid universe pads, or universe hybrid pads. These are the stock pads. Okay, stock pads. The ZMF Universe Hybrid comes stock with the AWKG anymore. So if you buy one of these, you will get a set of these ZMF pads in the package. So they are both stock. But these will come installed on the headphone. And I personally don't understand why. The ZMFs are a much superior pad in just about every way, in my opinion. Okay, these originally designed pads, they are a little bit thinner. They don't really have much of a forward angle to them, right? And they also are just not as comfortable, right? I mean, they feel nice and soft, but this just, $4,200 headphone. This just does not feel like a pad that is commensurate with that level of price to me. And I also don't like the sound nearly as much with those. We'll get to that in the sound section here a little bit more later on. Here is the ZMF Universe Hybrid, okay? Hybrid because we have this, what is this, suede or alcantara or something like that, and then we have the protein, or is this real leather? I don't know. We have the more leather-like material here. Okay, the ZMF pads do have a forward angle on them, so they do help widen the sound stage sound-wise as well. Now, actually switching the pads is a little bit of a challenge because, and I'm going to do this and I'm going to regret it because I'm going to have to figure out how to get this back on here again. But you just pull it off the flap here, and I want to do that because, well, there is the 53 millimeter dynamic driver with the permanent magnet structure on it there. It's well protected when you do a pad swap, so you don't have to worry about that as well so much. We got some foam damping material in here. But the reason I really wanted to pull that pad off is look at the pad ring here, the mounting ring for the pad. It is thicker in the back and a little bit underneath the ear here than it is in the front. Okay, so it's really thin here in the front, but it gets thick in the back. So that helps to give this more flat pad here. And of course, look at the way the driver is positioned. It's not like on the plane there. It's got an angle to it as well. That does help give some angle to the driver relative to the ear when these pads are on your head here. But this thick part makes it pretty tough to get these pads back on there. And I'm not going to do it here on camera because all you will do is laugh at me. Okay, but it can be a challenge, particularly with this thicker bit here, to actually swap this pad. So once you get the pads that you like, just stay there. Just stay there. Okay. All right. Build is fairly similar to Audio Technica build here. Like I did reviews recently of the ATH-AWKG 5000 and 3000 where they had very similar, okay, through here, okay, same kind of mounting system here, and even the same headband, although you get like this same kind of leathery material, almost the same here as is on the pad, just with this dark brown color, okay, on this one. But like the fit and the way it feels on the head and everything is basically identical to the ATH 5000, ATH 3000, except for just a little bit more weight because of the wood cups on there, and just like, you know, a little bit more robust build. And, you know, closed back, there's just more material involved in the construction of these things. But looks great. Okay, it is well made and all of that, and again, just the act of rolling the pads with this pad mounting ring being a little bit thicker back here than in the front is just something you needed to be aware of. Okay, and again, I'll explain this in the sound section. The ZMF pad, ZMF pads have always exuded quality. They have always been well made and very comfortable. These just do not come across as being as well made, and they certainly are not as comfortable on the sides of my head as the ZMFs were on that. And then these sounded better with this headphone, and again, we're going to get into that. So that's just the pad comparison there, in my opinion on that. Okay, so I'm going to stick this back on. Let's go back to the point I was making about the box that this comes in, and then I'll show you the cabling as part of that, and then I'll come back after that and we'll do test gear and sound and all of that fun stuff. All right, here we go. All right, let's talk about the cabling real quick, and then I will make that point that I alluded to earlier about this box here, which is why it's back. You get two flavors of cable in the box. Both cables are in the stock packaging, I say. So both stock cables come with this A2DC plug on the headphone end. Come on, focus camera. Okay, it's a modified MMCX, basically, right there. So it is detachable. They both cables that come in the box have those. One cable is a 6.35 millimeter / 1/4 inch single-ended cable, okay, like so, and it is 3 meters long. And 3 meters. There we go. Okay, it is kind of thin. Okay, not a super heavy gauge there. It also is like, I don't know how well it's showing up on the camera here. Come on, focus camera. It's also like a nylon fabric coating on it. I mean, and you can hear it dragging against that cardboard down there. So, I mean, it's got a little bit of a microphonic nature to it. Now, this headphone, or this cable, this is the single-ended one again. If you coil it up around your hand and you set it down, it will mostly stay there, okay? But if you go to, well, there it unwound a little bit, okay? But if you pick it up, it has a little bit of memory to it. It doesn't like uncoil particularly well. Okay, so managing the cable. Now, I don't remember it ever really tangling, okay? It just loops back around on itself, and I mean, you can see how much it likes to do that, okay? And again, you can also hear it rubbing on that cardboard. Sorry about that if that's bothering anyone, but you need to know that if you pay $4,200 for this headphone, that's the kind of experience that awaits you with the single-ended cable. All right, I keep saying single-ended cable because there is also a 4-pin XLR balanced cable, same length, okay, 3 meters. And this one is thicker. It is a heavier gauge than the single-ended cable. Okay, so here's the single-ended cable here. Here's the balanced cable. And you can definitely see that the balanced cable is thicker. Okay, just a heavier duty cable there. Okay, that part of it is okay. But that added diameter gives this a lot more springiness. Okay, I just coiled it around my hand off camera. I'm going to set it down here and, okay, and that's actually one of the milder times that I've seen it uncoil like that. You don't have to touch it much and it will just keep going. Now, if you grab an end of it and you lift it up, we still have that whole, like, it doesn't tangle, but it likes to loop back around on itself, and it's got some memory and some springiness to it, and like the other one, it's going to have that microphonics to it, because it's kind of coated with the same stuff. Okay, that point that I was going to make earlier. Okay, these cables and this case, why do fancy packaging like this? Let's just start there so I can make this point. Why do fancy packaging like this box? Well, it's part of the user experience, right? It's a premium experience, a $4,200 headphone. And you expect it to be packaged well. And you open up a package that looks like this, and it communicates a little bit about what the manufacturer feels about their product. Okay? And that they feel that their product is deserving of a little bit more extra care, okay, and a little bit more attention when you get a nice, at least a nice looking, a box like this. Again, this box itself is rather cheap and chintzy feeling, but it looks good. It looks good. Okay, but again, this stayed in the shipping carton on the bottom shelf here in my equipment rack, or like on a shelf away from my equipment rack, doing literally nothing except eating up space, okay, and having dust land on it, or at least the outer carton part of it. That's all it did for the entire, like, 2 months that this headphone was here. These cables, okay, provided they were any good or nice to use at all, would be used every day. So, 2 manufacturers of headphones. And I'm sorry, Audio-Technica, I know everyone gives crappy cables, and you're just, you know, the whole class was launching spitballs, and you're just the one that got caught when the teacher walked in, okay? So I'm not singling out Audio-Technica here. This is just an example that if you're trying to communicate how much you love your product with nice packaging like this, also do it with the cables. Okay, give us better cable experiences when we buy a multi-kilobuck headphone, because again, this goes on the shelf, out of sight, out of mind, eating up my storage space. Something like this I have to use every time I want to use your headphone. And if it's a $4,200 headphone that I'm spending money for out of my own pocket, it's a headphone I'm going to be using a lot, which means I'm going to be using a cable a lot, okay? But these cables kind of suck to use. So I just didn't use them. Okay, what did I use? This being about my 4th Audio-Technica headphone review lately, maybe 5th. Okay, probably know by now. This is from Audiophile Ninja. Jeremy at Audiophile Ninja made this one up for me because he normally didn't offer A2DC headphone cables in his normal lineup. Okay, but he made this one for me, and I said it works great, he should offer it, and so now he's working on getting A2DC cables up for Audio-Technica on his website, and that should be done relatively soon. Okay, so you will be able to buy a cable like this here pretty soon. This is just their basic conductor that will, normally would be like a 65 to 75 US dollar unit here, but you can buy this in the near future. And I just use this because it's a lot more ergonomically friendly. It is not as microphonic. I mean, it does have like a nylon coating, so, but I mean, that's quieter, right? We don't hear that as much as we did the others. And I did not have any microphonic issues with this like I did with the others. Okay, so just back to the main point then. Box looks good, cheaply made, but it looks good and communicates for that one time I ever see it that Audio-Technica cares about their headphone. But they clearly care less about the quality of the user experience. And what's with that? Why? Why do that? Okay, and again, it's not just Audio-Technica who does that. It's a lot of high-end headphone manufacturers. Stop it, all of you. Okay, on with the rest of the review. All right, last note on build and comfort. I'll just go ahead and put it on my head here real quick and just talk about like the comfort and what it feels like. This is what it looks like on my head here. And the attenuation of because it is a closed back, the attenuation of ambient sounds is okay. I can still hear a little bit the whir of my desktop computer case fan, which I don't think the microphone is picking up, but that's off to my left a little bit. I still hear it very slightly when this is on, and the reason that's on and powered up is because I'm about to dump a bunch of video files on there and start video editing, right? And so I do hear that a little bit. If I snap my fingers, it does sound a little bit dulled, but like, I mean, this is not the most attenuation I have ever heard. It's also not the least. I think the ZMFs do attenuate a little bit better because they're a little bit thicker, fuller pad. They seal to my head better on there as well. As far as sound leak out, I don't really have an answer for you on that one. I'm not really able to hear it when it's on my head and be out there. I don't know how much it matters though on a $4,200 headphone. Just because I struggle to see someone taking a $4,200 headphone to their cubicle at an office building and just using it there. I just don't think that's going to happen very often. It probably attenuates enough where if you live in a small apartment with other people and you're a late night listener, you're probably not going to bother them too much. Okay, but I wouldn't expect perfect attenuation and holding in sound either, particularly if you are a loud listener. All right, so with that, we will transition then to test gear and sound and then really get into all of that. Okay, so test gear. As usual, I'm an all digital listener here. So lossless and high-res FLAC files, either played locally or streamed from Qobuz all through Roon. Same with local DSD files played locally through Roon. Roon endpoints would have included a Sonor Ultra Rendu streamer routed through a Singer SU6 DDC or a Chord 2Go streamer mated directly to a Chord Hugo 2 transportable DAC amp. Okay, I use the Audiophile Ninja cable that I mentioned too for the bulk of my listening. On that Chord Hugo 2, I have a little P&W adapter to go from the dual RCA output to a 4.4 millimeter Pentacon output. Another Sonor Ultra Rendu would have been routed directly via USB, direct USB through a Lampezator Baltic 3 DAC. The Singer SU6 that was connected to another Ultra Rendu would have been routed through a Berkeley Alpha Series 2 DAC, and then also I2S into a Hollow May that I had in for review here recently as well. See the link down in the description. Headphone amps that I would have used here would have been the amplifier output section of that Hugo 2. I also used an iBasso DX260 DAP, using the all local files on that, either again lossless or high-res FLAC files or DSD files, using their Mango software player on their DX260. So that was another way of powering this here on a mobile device, 4.4 millimeter output on that. Okay, desktop amps that I would have used include, but are probably not limited to, the Hollow Bliss, the HiFiMan Golden Wave Prelude, and my LTA Z10E. Those would have been the main ones, again, with those mobiles. There are probably some others in there, but I think you get the idea. There's a fair wide range of stuff in there. Okay. Also, I ran with the ZMF pads from very early on. I figured out pretty early on that the ZMF pads changed the tuning closer to my preferences to a fair degree, so I have left them on and used them for my critical listening. All right, so let me explain the journey that I went through early on this, because I think it does tell the story of this headphone a little bit. My understanding is that when Audio-Technica USA sent this over to me, it was brand new in the box. It had never been opened before. It was this completely brand new unit. And when I first took it out, it had these pads on it right here, and put it on my head and plugged it in, queued up some music, hit play, and was just immediately disappointed. And very much so. Okay, because the sound was harsh and crunchy and just had like no real flow to it or anything of that nature. There was a very sharp treble peak in it, a very prominent mid-range peak in it. So I mean, hollow timbre, shouty, honky, all of those things, very fatiguing, and lots of sibilance in the treble and all of that. And it just, again, was very crunchy, harsh, brittle, hollow, not good at all. Turns out it needed a lot of break-in. Okay, the drivers in here, you need to give them probably a good 100 hours before it is really ready to go. So I put this on a headphone stand, that iBasso DX260 that I told you about, and also even going back to the DX180 that I did a review for. Didn't do a whole lot of listening to that combination, but use that. What I would do is I would plug one of those two DAPs into AC power and then the headphone output directly into this thing, turn them up really loud, and then just let them play for several nights overnight running until I hit about 100 total hours of break-in time for this before I could start the critical listening. And I would come back every morning after letting it play for an overnight session, take it off the stand, put it on, listen for a little bit, and see if any of that stuff had smoothed out, if the treble peak had tamed, if the crunchiness had gone away, if the hollowness and all of that was starting to fill out, if the bass was starting to liven up, all of those things. And I could tell that after like 3 or 4 nights, there was not a whole lot of change. After about the 5th or 6th night in there of playing, 12 to 15 hours like straight, it was started like the treble peak and that mid-range prominence was starting to chill out a little bit. The tonal balance up there was improving. The bass was starting to liven up. I was starting to get some more sub bass in there, some more impact in the bass and all of that. But anyway, it took like about 8 to 9 nights of like 12 to 15 hour sessions in there. So I'm, calling it basically 100 hours in there before I could really feel comfortable and confident on this being ready for critical listening. So I do think mechanical break-in on this headphone is very real, and it's something that you're going to need to do if you get a brand new unit. So keep that in mind. Okay. Once the break-in was done, it did smooth out a lot, and I was using these pads. And the Audio-Technica pads here, if you're just listening and not watching. And those were extremely mid-range and treble focused, like extremely mid-range and treble focused. So that treble peak that I was talking about, the harshness and the sibilance mostly had gone away. But it was still there every now and then, and the air frequencies were just kind of a little bit far forward. They appeared, but they were a little bit far forward for me and all of that. And then the tonal balance through the mids on these pads was, you know, not good at all. Okay, kind of this timbral quality, but if you can picture this in your mind, you know, sound picture this in your mind with lots of clarity. That's the kind of effect that I was getting a lot, just very forward mids, and then the sub bass was very, very rolled off. So I went to the ZMF pads, and that really helped the sub bass come out. It gave it a much fuller sound. It warmed the overall character of the sound. It got that treble peak that was in there, like sibilance became very rare with the ZMF pads. The air frequencies were brought down into more realistic levels and all of that. The mid-range was still very prominent, but it was more tonally balanced than it was with these pads. And then also the sound stage, because of that more forward angle, okay, of the drivers relative to the ear there. Like that opened up the soundstage a little bit more and gave it a little bit more room to breathe. So I think to these ears and to my preferences, the ZMF pads are much more accurate and real sounding. They are much more balanced and complete sounding than the Audio-Technica pads are. And they also help tame just the outrageously forward mids to my ears that come with the Audio-Technica pads. It doesn't cure it, which we'll get into, but it helps a lot. So all of my evaluations going forward then in terms of my critical listening are with this audiophile Ninja cable that I mentioned a little bit ago, and then the ZMF pads on here. So with that, what do we get into? 1,000-foot view of the overall perceived frequency response of this. Mid-forward, as I just mentioned. I think with the ZMF pads, the bass extension is excellent. It digs really deep and it's pretty linear all the way down into the subsonic region that I could hear. The upper treble, pretty well balanced, very well extended, but again, mostly flat. I don't get the sense that the upper treble or anything is prominent or recessed or anything like that. So flat in the extremes with a little bit of a bump in the mid-range here. Upper mids, lower treble in particular here. It is a very mid-range forward, mid-range centric kind of sound here. Okay, so if you are a person who likes the vocal performance of a piece to stand out and like almost feel like it's hovering in front of the rest of the music and is like more in your face than the rest of the sound, this is a good headphone for you. This is a good option for you to consider. Okay. I don't like that because the tone and the timbre to me, particularly through the mid-range, is just off. Okay, it does not sound realistic, natural, or organic to my ears in any way. Okay, and I can't emphasize that point strongly enough, is that the mid-range performance here is so forward, and it's like, and the range of the forwardness is so narrow that the tonal balance between fundamental frequencies and the harmonics of those frequencies is not anything near what real world sounds are to these ears. Now, your ears might be different, or you just might like the more forward mid-range presentation, and that's fine. There is a lot to love about this headphone, which we'll get to in just a moment. But I think that the audience that this is going to appeal to, particularly Western audiences, I'll get to this in just a moment, I think is going to be rather narrow. Okay, I don't think this is going to have broad appeal to the general audiophile community outside of maybe some Eastern countries. Because in my communications with Audio-Technica USA, and again, they were very careful to not tell me what to think about this headphone until I had listened to it for a while, and then I started asking them questions about it and giving some of my thoughts, and they started giving me some feedback and like all that, and they, for the most part, agreed with a lot of my takes, and they described the tuning of this as being more Japanese in its style, right? There is, I guess, a segment, and I'm understanding it to be a rather large segment, of the Japanese market that does prefer a more mid and treble focused kind of sound. And that's what this is. Mid-range more than treble to my ears, especially with the ZMF pads. I can definitely hear more treble influence and brightness with the Audio Technica pads, okay? But that's what we're getting here. A headphone that I have reviewed in the past that had a similar tuning to this would be the Yamaha YH5000 SE. If you want to call this a closed back Yamaha YH5000 SE, that's not far off from what this is, at least in terms of the tuning and the sonic package here is. And that was another thing that I mentioned to Audio Technica, and they said, it's funny you should say that, because apparently a member of the Audio Technica team left Audio Technica, went to Yamaha, and was part of the team that designed the Yamaha YH5000 SE. That person did not have a role in designing this headphone, okay, but there's probably some commonality and similarity of philosophy that made its way over there, and the two headphones are, at least in terms of their tuning, are very similar, okay, in there. So if you've heard the Yamaha YH5000 SE, we're looking at that kind of a tuning here for this headphone. So that may help some of you out there. Okay, so the tone and the timbre are just, particularly through the mid-range, are not for me, and I don't think they're going to be for a large percentage of the potential audience out there. So again, like, try it before you buy it if you can, or buy from a place with a good return policy, just in case that your ears are like mine and this doesn't work for you. All right, but with that out of the way, let's get to the considerable strengths of this headphone, because there really are a good number of them. Okay, even in the tuning, the bass with the ZMF pads on this, great extension. It has some really good grunt and authority in the sub bass. It is not forward, like there's not a bass shelf to my ears here, but it's linear all the way down. It digs really deep. It's got some good healthy presence to it, and it's also very fast. It's got some good slam to it. It has some really good pitch definition and articulation in the low end. Okay, and then it's very dynamic and hard-hitting and impactful in the low end there too. Okay, treble with the ZMF pads, cymbal crashes above hi-hat frequencies. So some crash cymbals that get a little higher up can sound really very realistic as well. Okay, very speedy, a very satisfying but realistic and believable attack to it. On there is a very dynamic and lively sound, and a well-tonally balanced sound there way up top. Okay, so the tuning has strengths high, very high, and very low. It's in the middle where it gets wonky there, but I wanted to bring those strengths out as well. Now, presentational aspects of this headphone. The dynamics and Pratt stuff, pace, rhythm, and timing, excellent. I mean, elite level, challenging OG Utopia kind of level, which we'll get to here in a moment. Resolution and detail retrieval, elite, okay, on an elite tier with this headphone. The holography of the spatial presentation can be on an elite level as well, but I think the mid-range tuning does hurt it a little bit in certain circumstances. Let's go through all of what I just said and explain that here in a little bit further detail. Okay, one of the standout features of this headphone and its sound are its dynamics. As I said, Pratt, pace, rhythm, and timing, excellent, very realistic. In addition to that healthy bass slam that I mentioned earlier, just snare drums have a really quick snap to them. As I said with cymbal crashes, they attack fairly aggressively but realistically, because cymbal crashes, like on a drum kit, when it gets hit by a stick, that's an aggressively attacking sound, and that comes through on this headphone here. Now, The decay timings might be just a little bit short for some. This does have a little bit overall drier sound to it than something like a Susvara or a Utopia, and that's because the decay timings are a little bit quick. So it has a flavor of electrostatic speed to it. Okay, and I say that because electrostatic headphones, like I have the Stax SR 009S in here because I'm still working on my LTA Z10E review, and that can drive E-stats. So that was loaned to me. We'll get into that later, okay? But I have another E-stat on hand to kind of do that. And so this one is not all the way towards the E-stat side on dryness, or like the stereotypically dry E-stat sound anyway, but it is a little bit drier than most other dynamic and planar magnetic headphones that I have heard out there, okay? But it comes across as a very speedy sound, okay? And that then also kind of helps with the resolution and the detail retrieval. Like, it is a very clean, clear, and well separated sound. Instrument and vocal separation are excellent here. Spatial separation, which is part of resolution and detail retrieval, I think, also excellent here. Okay, but it does not miss much. Basically, all of the details in the signal are coming out here. Room reverbs, okay? All of the crowd noise, or just like the sound, like if you're at an orchestral or if you have an orchestral recording, just the sound of seat creaking and page turning of all of the instrumentalists turning the pages of their music and all of that. You hear it all, okay? It's all in there. Okay, so that is excellent. And then like the texturing to the sound is also standout, okay, all that. So basically anything that is connected to resolution and detail retrieval, this headphone can really excel at. Now, that mid-range forwardness in the tuning does emphasize the detail retrieval through those same frequencies where the mid-range peak happens a little bit. So the detail retrieval presentation is a little bit uneven and a little bit unnatural because, again, in that range where the mids are forward, the details seem a little bit emphasized because they're brought up, right? It's like I don't think that in terms of raw ability, the mid-range is more resolving than the bass is or the treble is. It just sounds more so because there's just more of it in terms of level compared to the others. Okay, so that's something to keep in mind there as well, I think, if you're interested in this one. Okay, the spatial presentation. Again, it can be like stunningly three-dimensional and holographic, unless there are a ton of mid-range instruments or sounds going on. Okay, why? All right. To get that vocal standout presentation that I mentioned a little bit ago, some people like their vocals to kind of hover in front of the rest of the sound. To get that, you do have to play some frequency response games. You got to bring the mids up, okay? Or at least lower everything else so that the mids are relatively higher. Particularly the upper mids are a little bit higher than the rest of the sonic spectrum there in terms of relative level to each other. The problem with that is that headphone drivers, speaker drivers, whatever, they're dumb, right? They cannot plan anything for themselves. They can only do what they're told as well as they are physically able to do it. Okay, so they can't add anything. They can definitely mess things up or subtract things, but they can never add in any information. So to get things to stand out, then we've got to tweak what these things do to the shape of the sound coming in, and in this case, bring up the mids. So to get those mids to stand forward also means that anything that's like a piano in the same frequency, an acoustic guitar, a trumpet, a violin, okay, you're getting the picture here. Any other instruments that are having frequencies played in the same range as a vocal performance that is pushed forward is also going to get pushed forward, okay? The headphone drivers can't just take the vocal sounds and pull them out. There's no processing. They have no ability to do that. So all of the frequencies in that range are getting pushed forward. So what happens with this headphone is a little bit of the stage coherence is lost because of that forwardness in the mid-range. So when pans happen across the sound field, it's not like not a hemispherical shape in front of me. It's not a straight line in front of me. It's kind of like this, okay? Where you might hear something like this and then boom, center image pops out right in front of my face and then it's back again over here. And it's always with those mid-range frequencies. Vocalists, okay, center imaged pianos, violins, you know, all of that kind of stuff. So if you listen to like a 70-piece symphony orchestra kind of thing, to me, it would sound like the two sides are pushed back a little bit, and then in the middle where all the violins and the flutes and the trumpets and like all of those mid-range instruments are, they're just all pushed towards me relative to what's going on the outside. So the spatial coherence just really isn't there because of that. I did try EQ on this one, okay, because there was a lot of good stuff going on. I will go ahead and flash up the simple EQ that I did through Roon on the screen. All right, what did that help do? One, that did help pull the mid-range, like the spatial presentation back into more spatial coherence and accuracy. Okay, it didn't quite fix the hollow or shouty timbre that came with the mids being very aggressively forward. Okay, but it helped with that. Didn't cure it, but it did help with the spatial aspects a lot. And that's where I noticed that this headphone then is capable of being on a truly elite tier in the world of headphonery, okay, out there in terms of its ability to do spatial separation, spatial imaging, spatial separation, and sound like three-dimensional and holographic, very well balanced in the three spatial dimensions, all of that. It doesn't ever really sound huge in soundstage, nor is it intimate. It's just kind of what it needs to be, but it can be startlingly almost three-dimensional, okay, within its respective soundstage size there, if you can get those mids under control. Because for my ears, the mids collapse it, okay? Now, then again, that might not be an issue for you. You may not care about the spatial recreation as much as I do, okay? Or you may not listen to music where that really matters all of that much. But that is the thing that I noticed about this headphone here. Again, what it's capable of is elite tier. What it's delivered in stock tuning form or with the ZMF tuning form doesn't quite live up to its true capability, okay, in that area. Okay. Boy, that's a lot of description on this headphone here, I think. Let's talk about where it fits into the market here amongst closed backs. It's a big step up from, and I have it right here, like I think I've said this recently, I've acquired the Dan Clark Audio E3. Again, this is $2,000. It's a planar magnetic closed back. The Audio Technica AWKG here is very noticeably more resolving than the E3 is, with a much more textured sound on it, particularly like in the low end where I could hear that bass come through. Like, I was listening to the bass guitar on what track was it that I heard this? Simple Man by Leonard Skinner. The bass guitar intro on that, just like every string pluck of the bass guitar was impactful and crystal clear and textured, and I could hear the finger action of the string, dragging across, or the finger dragging across the string before it actually plucked it. And then the transient came through beautifully, and then the tone followed here on the AWKG. And all of that stuff was present on the E3. It was just a little bit muddier and was not as clearly portrayed, and it wasn't like the bassist was there. The AWKG almost made it sound like the bassist was right there in the room with me, and I didn't quite get that with the E3 here. So the technical step up of the AWKG here over the E3 is significant. It is significant, okay? But the tuning of the E3 is far more natural. And the dynamics of the AWKG also like much more engaging and active than what's on the E3 as well. But the E3 just sounds so much more realistic to me, because its tuning is so much more natural and to my ears anyway. And so I prefer the E3, listening to the E3 over the AWKG, even with the EQ curve on the AWKG, because again, I couldn't quite get the narrow enough band in the EQ software that's built into Roon to find where that mid-range peak was that was causing the hollow, shouty kind of timbre in there, to find it and really get it out there. I could just reduce it enough that it didn't collapse the soundstage around me. The other really high-end closed-backs that I have heard are the Dan Clark Audio Stealth, which the only advantage the Stealth has, similar to like the E3, the only advantage that the Stealth has over the AWKG would be the tuning. It has a more natural tuning. But everything else, the resolution, the detail retrieval, the dynamics, all of that, I would easily pick the AWKG over on that one. Ease of drive. This one is much more easier to drive than the DCA Stealth as well. I want to compare this though to a couple of open back references that I have around, and that would be the original Focal Utopia and the original Headphone Susvara, because I think technically this is actually quite a favorable comparison in there. And I keep saying this, like, this thing is a technical marvel that just has some very, for these ears, unfortunate tuning decisions behind it. Okay? As I said earlier, the pace, rhythm, timing, dynamics on this are excellent, and they challenge the Utopia, which I thought was like top dog on those aspects out there. It still do. Like the Utopia series, in terms of like, it is like one of the top 1 or 2 headphones on this planet right now in terms of pace, rhythm, timing, dynamics, and all of that. And this, if it's not tied, it's just hot on the heels. It is like really challenging the Utopia series on that. This sounds a little bit drier. So the Utopias last a little bit longer on the decays. So they have a little bit wetter sound than this one, whereas this one's a little bit drier. Okay. But that's like the biggest difference in terms of the timing aspects of the sound between the two. The Utopia might be just a hair more impactful than the true deep sub bass, but it's not by a lot. Okay, it is not by a lot. All right, but then this one is also challenging the Utopia in terms of like raw resolution, and the Utopia is also one of the most resolving headphones on the planet still. Okay, and so this one is right there with it. Okay, ditto Susvara. I think the Susvara just out-resolves this one, and it just slightly more holographic and three-dimensional in its spatial presentation, and is the more natural headphone just because of the more natural sounding headphone, just because of its more reasonable and lifelike tuning than what this one has. But this one is not far off of the technical ability of the original Susvara. It really isn't, okay? And that's why I say the technical package on this headphone is elite for any kind of headphone. Open back, closed back, okay, orthodynamic, electrostatic, it's elite. It is on the elite tier. It is one of the most technically proficient headphones on planet Earth right now, okay? The tuning, though, I just keep coming back to that. The tuning is just so unfortunate for my preferences and all that. And I wanted to love this headphone because of just how cool it is, and also, you know, just the lack of really good high-end closebacks. And this is a really good high-end closeback, but just I can't do it on the tuning. It's too shouty, it's too honky, it's too hollow, it's too fatiguing to my ears in there. And even if I EQ it down, the mid-range down, I still can't get rid of those timbral issues in there because the peaks are just too narrow for the EQ stuff that I have and that I'm willing to put the time into to find, okay? So my hope going forward is that Audio-Technica follows a pattern that they have kind of set up lately. And that is, they had 2 examples that I can tell you here. They had their ATH-R70X headphone for a very long time, which was a little bit mid-forward, a little bit treble emphasized. Then they collaborated with APOS to bring out the ATH-R70X Refine. And the Refine was a much warmer, headphone that was more accurately tonally balanced through the mid-range in particular and was a much more enjoyable listening experience. Okay. More recently, they had the ATH-AWKG out for years, and that one, again, has that more, like, for lack of a better term, Japanese tuning. More mid and treble focused in its tuning. Sounds shouty, honky, hollow, you know, all of that kind of stuff on it. But then they released the ATX-3000, which was warmer, fuller, had a little bit more natural tonal balance and timbre through the mid-range. So I have hopes that up their sleeves, they are going to take the technical excellence, again, elite level technicalities in here, okay? They're going to take the technical excellence of this headphone, give it either a different model or a tweaked unit or something that is a warmer and more naturally tuned headphone, something tuned more like the E3, okay? That they're going to do that, because if they do, then they might really have what many would consider a closed back end game headphone. Okay, so Audio-Technica, please do that. Okay, please. Okay, because again, the technical package here, astounding, on an elite tier. Closed back, open back, doesn't matter. Elite in terms of its technical proficiency, unfortunately tuned. All right. I am Wave Theory. Thanks for watching my review of the Audio-Technica Narukami series ATH-AWKG closed back headphone, $4,200, technical marvel. Don't understand the tuning. Please remember to like, subscribe, comment, check out my PayPal, my Patreon. Generally do those things you do to support YouTube channels. And as always, enjoy the music.